The fire burning red in a Georgia representing if it comes hard here. You know. Big up Kidaki, Buxton massive. Hey Babylon boy, you going like come son. Red.
Never joke, never joke, never joke. Oh, money never, money never, money never, money never, money never, money. Now know what you conniving, money. Money never, money never, money never, money. You can keep your conniving money. When you've been up for a bum, in a bit there be money. Now because your money done, you come with conniving money. When you had your pocket full, in a bit there be money. Now because your money done, you hustle to tell me money. Yes, money never, money never, money, money never, money, money. Now know what you conniving money. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. That's all the money that me walk. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. This is all the money that me walk. Money neighbor, money neighbor, money, money neighbor, money, money. I know what you can have in money. Oh, Joseph.
Guyana and Guyanese, at home and abroad. Tune in to Guyanese Morning Time, hosted by Kadaki Amsterdam, where the sun always shines. Guyanese Morning Time, the people call it Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people call it Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. We rise up early morning watching Comes TV, where wisdom and knowledge, yes, it is the key. Exposing corruption over land and sea, where the wicked politicians they try to trick me. Guyana is a land for everybody. With 6 races should live in harmony. It's one set of people getting aisle money. It's one set of people doing the thievery. Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. This is a program that you all can see. Sharing your views and your integrity. Like it, comment and share it all around. Pass it to your neighbor, safe and sound. A sad situation going on in this town. The voice of the people is getting trampled down. Out of the mouths of babes and sucklings, which has ordained me to sing. I sing Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, fooling the people. You're promoting evil. Stop lying to the people. You are a part of the cycle. Stop fooling people. You're promoting evil. Stop lying to the people. You are a part of the cycle. I say, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. They got Breakford, Bork and Mark Benchcop. David Hines and Kadaki Amsterdam. Sherrod Duncan, Nigel London. Normal Brown and Gavin Matthews. Big up Paslow, Port People Governor. Simona Brooms, Robin Simpson. Hampton Green and Winston Jordan. And yes, we can go right on and on. Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again.
The relatives and friends of young Wyndham Bacchus, they deserve justice. The family, the relatives and friends of our in Boston, they deserve justice. The family, the relatives and friends of Peter Headley, they deserve justice. And so when we say that Guyana is an apartheid state, we have the evidence to show.
Hey fans, it's karaoke and oldies night this and every Thursday at Clock Twilight Sideline Dam, Buxton. Dance to the magical songs of yesteryear by popular DJs and Camps Audio. Admission is free. Come out, let's make memories at Clock Twilight Sideline Dam, Buxton North. You can get meat anywhere, but for the best cuts of chicken, beef, pork, mutton, and lots more, check out T&W Harris Butcher Shop located in the East Rheinveld Market Meat Section. Call us on 609-7168, 641-4494. Ask for Rastaman. T&W Harris Butcher Shop for the best in fresh cut meats and lots more.
Comes out your son. You burn the swine when I want you shine. The tree of life, them I want you climb, cause them heart no kind. Comes I say them heart no kind. Buxton Massive, Kidaki, Red Hat.
Kidaki, Amsterdam. It is
Guyana and other parts of the world.
what kind of with you? Give me even a man. It is 7 hours 28 on the 17th day of April in the year 2024. I am your host. Welcome to the program. How are you doing? How was your yesterday? What did you achieve yesterday? Okay, I have some changes to make, but I'll do that eventually. Those of you who've been seeing Buxtonian Morning Time on the program, it is not that the spelling and all around. It's not that I've gone back to Buxtonian Morning Time, but it has always been Guyanese Buxtonian Morning Time since we made the change. But because of the new software, I am not even sure where to put what. So it seems as though I'm mixing up the titles, right? Sometimes I get it right, sometimes I don't get it right. But I will figure it out eventually. Now, base train. Every time I use that word base train, I remember somebody told me base train is a particular set of people. Mr. Amsterdam, don't use it. Yeah. Well, I know it. How was it yesterday? What happened yesterday that you were intrigued by? What happened yesterday that gave you hope? How did you rest last night? Those are some of the things you can tell us quickly. You know, this is Ghana, dear land of Ghana. I am proud to be Guyanese, but I'm ashamed of the people we got for government in this country, quite frankly. I see a post making the wrongs right now. Juanita Uborn commented on the state of chaos at GPL, and instead of civilized response, she was met with the most crass cuss out, as we call it. The crassest of cuss out from an office that is paid for by taxpayers' money. But we're going to talk about that. It's Wednesday, and Dr. Hines is in the house. Dr. Hines, welcome to the program. Let me say I'm really I was expecting not to see you here this morning, but you must know why. How you doing, Mike? That's why you take care of the thing. So the thing make you look young, you know, young and handsome. Anyhow, go ahead.
Yes, good morning. Are you hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you. We are hearing you.
Yes.
Yes, I was saying I'm surprised that I was able to get you here this morning. But you know why.
Yes, the arrangements have changed.
Yes.
Arrangements have changed, yes.
You know, it's an indictment to you when you're not staying in contact with your General Secretary.
Yes, I know. Things have been quite hectic at this end, but we'll talk.
All right, good. So it's another Wednesday. For the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about geopolitics and its influence on the local political scenery and so on. Last week we ended up talking about what was deemed the civil rebellions and so on, right? Is that what we call it, the civil rebellion?
Yes, it's a term that was coined by AUC Guyana to describe WPA activities 1979-80.
Right. And so coming out of those discussions, a number of follow-up questions basically I was faced with. Some of them specific to the WPA, some of them specific to the nation. In terms of the WPA, I was asked, did the WPA ever contest an election on its own?
Yes, we contested in 1985, our first election. Our presidential candidate was AUC Guyana. In 1992, we contested on our own. Our presidential candidate was Professor Clive Thomas, prime ministerial candidate Rupert Ryan. In 1997, we contested along with WPA citizens there was a group of citizens led by Sheila Holder, who later became a WPA member. There were also a party, was called the Guyana Labour Party, that was led by Nanda Gopal and Basil Butcher. They were part of our slate in 1997. In 2001, we contested along with GAP WPA. 2006, we did not contest. 2011, of course, we were part of the APNU. And 2015 and 20, we were part of APNU AFC.
Right. I want you to, I mean, you've listed the years and so on. Let us go a little further if possible and discuss with viewers, let me see, the results of those efforts, electoral efforts starting from 1980. Because people seem not to know, not to know, and I would say an in-depth history of WP as to what it did, what the achievements were as a result of what it did. And so, in the interest of clarity, let's talk from 1980. UC Guyana was the presidential candidate. At that time, we never used to go with prime ministerial candidate. And that's something else I would like you sometime as we go along to address here. When we started with this prime ministerial candidate thing, because I remember it was only the presidential candidate that you had to name previously. So,
yes, 1992. 1992 is when we started with the prime ministerial candidate. There was a shift in 1992 from party to individual, and we became a kind of an American style, or elections took on a kind of American style thing where the emphasis was on the top of the ticket rather than the party. That started in 1992.
What created that shift?
Well, the world was changing. The world was changing, and the emphasis, like I said, was from the party to the individual. All the political parties, the PNC, ran on its achievements between 85 and 92. The PPP ran as part of the PPP Civic. So the Civic had to have representation. So they gave the prime ministerial candidate to the Civic. And in the WPA, it was more an ethnic thing, since the presidential candidate was African Guyanese. The prime ministerial candidate was Indo-Guyanese. So there wasn't anything constitutional, just that the world was moving on. And there was an emphasis now on individuals rather than party. And that has continued to this day.
Thank you.
In relation to your questions about what WP achieved, there's much to achieve when you're in opposition. It was in opposition up until 2015, when it was part of the coalition government between 2015 and 2020. Other than that, it was in opposition. It got one seat at each election, except 2001, when it got 2 seats, and it was represented, GAP WPA was represented by Sheila Holder, and I'm forgetting her name, an Amerindian sister, representing GAP. But that was
I think her name is Grace what?
No, she wasn't Grace, but I will remember her name before the end of the program. But there's not much. I mean, third parties are what they are. There was a breakthrough. There was a breakthrough in 2006 when the AFC came onto the scene, and people coalesced around the AFC, and the AFC got, I think, about 5 seats. That was a breakthrough, and that doesn't happen very often in bifurcated polities like ours. You have to go back to 1961 and 1964 when the UF got about 5 seats. And then we had to wait until 2006 when the AFC got 5 seats. And in 2011, they got 7 seats. Third parties have not always fared well in terms of seats. And the AFC itself was a coalition. It was really Raphael Trotman from the AFC, shareholder from the WPA, and Kemal Ramjatan from the PPP. It was really a coalition, the AFC. And in 2006, the Raphael Trotman faction brought in the votes. The PNC got the lowest ever votes. They got 34% of the votes to the AFC 7. So the AFC votes in 2006 came from the PNC. And then things switched. Once the APNU was formed in 2011, the African Guyanese from the AFC returned. Some would argue it was the WPA presence that brought them back to the coalition, because they were coming back not to the PNC but to the APNU. But the AFC still did well because the presidential candidate changed from Trotman to Ramjatan. But it was not Ramjatan that actually brought the votes. It was Moses Nagamoto, who left the PPP shortly before the 2000 election and brought a following with him. And that following gave the AFC the seats they got. So the AFC moves from a predominantly African-centered party electorally in 2006 to an Indian-centered party in 2011. Things, as I say that, I'm remembering that in the United States, how your race can change by crossing state lines. Because, in the old days, you had the one-drop law. Tennessee would say 1/10 of black blood made you black. Alabama would say 1/5 made you black. So you could cross from Tennessee to Alabama and your race changed based on your complexion, because nobody tested your blood to see anything. But anyhow, the AFC went from an African-centered party electorally in 2006 to 2011 to become an Indian-centered party. So third parties have really not fared well in our elections. By 2020, we were back to where we were, square one. The WPA is an interesting third party because although it was not successful electorally, it was the first third party in post-colonial Ghana that mobilized thousands of people on the streets and in public activities and so on. And in those days, elections were not free and fair. So it was hard to test the electoral. Walter Rodney, for example, never contested an election. He came back in 1974. Elections were due in 1978. They were postponed because there was a referendum to change the constitution. The next election was 1980. He was dead by then. Nobody knew if they were free and fair elections and Walter Rodney had contested, how well the WPA would have done. Nobody knew. Nobody knows that. Nobody knows that. The WPA did not contest the 1980 election. Its first election was 1985, which the according to statistics, was the most rigged of the election 1985. Which
a lot of people, and I dare say, perhaps you fall into that same trend in your responses just now. A lot of people seem to attribute success of a political party with the number of seats it occupies in the parliament. In this instance, I want to say, in the instance of WP, WPA's successes cannot necessarily, or are not necessarily to be measured by how many seats it got in parliament. And I'm saying that because I know for a fact that the presidential candidate in the 1985 elections, I think he said, UC Koyana, about UC, would have done so much work as a lone ranger in the National Assembly on behalf of the WP. I'm talking about legislative work, keeping government honest, and stuff like that. And that has been, for me, the example of the WPA throughout the years, whether they had 1 seat, whether they had 2 seats. Can you reflect on some of the work that was done over the period of time by WPA politics?
Well, if you're a member of parliament, that's your work. Your work as a member of parliament is to bring bills, query the government. There's not much else to do. And Koyana is an old, by 1985, I mean, he knew the system very well, and he was able to go into parliament and with 1 seat really kept the WP in the forefront. He would constantly put legislation on the order paper. Many of them were not heard, but he was there and is very present because he was Koyana. And there is a way in which the PNC and PPP parliamentarians would treat other people they wouldn't treat Koyana. One of his lasting achievements was to get the PNC and the PPP to both support a motion calling for national reconciliation. That is often forgotten. Those were the days you couldn't get the PNC and the PPP to agree on nothing. And he was able to do that. Sheila Older was very energetic in parliament too, during our time, in terms of putting legislation on the order paper and so on, and making representation on behalf of people. So yes, that's what third parties do in our polity. And if you look across the Caribbean, you know, none of the Caribbean countries has been able to accommodate more than 2 parties. You had a bizarre situation in Trinidad in 2000 and I think 2005. But there was a party called, and it's still there. It's a shell now. A party called the Congress of the People Cup, and it was a breakaway party. Members from the PNM, members from the UNC, and they formed CUP. And they got 20% of the votes in 2005, I think. But because of the first past the post system, they didn't get a single seat. If they were in Guyana, they would have gotten 25% of 36 seats, which would have been close to about 8 or 9 seats in parliament. They didn't. And they eventually went into a coalition with the UNC. And the rest is history. Today, they are hardly, you know, there is a shell of a party. In Dominica, there was the Labour Party, and there was the Dominica Freedom Party led by Eugenia Charles. And then a third party was formed by a man named Edison James. And that third party actually won power. But by the next election, the Freedom Party of Eugenia Charles had become a third party. It won about 1 or 2 seats. Today it doesn't really exist. So our Caribbean societies have not accommodated third parties. You had the formation of third parties in Jamaica. They never got any way. There was the Workers' Party of Jamaica. which would have been the WP equivalent in Jamaica. It never won any seat. And then later on, Bruce Golding left the Jamaica Labour Party, former third party, didn't win a seat, eventually folded up that third party and went back to the Jamaica Labour Party and became Prime Minister. In Barbados, Dr. Richie Haynes and a few others, I think Bezal was part of that. They left the Barbados Labour, the Democratic Labour Party under Erskine Sandiford, and they took their seats with them. So they had about 3 or 4 seats in Parliament. But by the next election, they couldn't win a seat. All right? So if you go around the Caribbean, third parties have not. We are what they call a two-party system, as is the case in England, which we are modeled after.
Thank you. And talking about taking seats with them, well, before I go there with the taking seat business, I'm thinking, I'm somewhere in the back of my mind, I'm thinking that WPA was integral in quote unquote activism, which resulted in the current structure of the National Assembly in terms of the number of women who are part of the National Assembly by law. Am I right?
Yes, you're correct. We, during the constitutional reform system, we had 1 seat in Parliament, Brother Rupert Ruppenrein, but we were very active in the constitutional reform process. Ralph Ramkaran was the PPP's point man, our countryman, as Hasden Paris was the PNC point man, and Rupert Ruppenrein from the WPA. The 3 of them were the engine room during the constitutional reform process. And Guyana behind the scenes drafted a lot of legislation on behalf of the WPA, which Dr. Ruppenrein took to the constitutional process. And one of the things that came from us was that women, any party slate at an election must have 30% women. That is 3 out of 10 people on a party slate must be women by law. So all parties are compelled. Now, our understanding was that if 30% of the slate must be women, 30% of representation in Parliament must be women. But the other parties took a different view, right? They felt that the legislation only compelled them to have 30% women on the slate, but not 30% of the seats that you win must be women. In 2001, when GAP WPA won, I think 3 or 4% of the votes, we got 2 seats. And both seats were given to women under the principle that 30%. But yes, the WPA were the authors of that legislation, making it legal for 30% of all party slate to be women. And from our standpoint, 30% of your representation in Parliament should be women. But the other parties did not honor that. As I said, we contributed more than our 1 seat in the National Assembly. We constitute more than that today. Guyana, you recently revealed about a year ago that one of the laws that compels the government, whenever any group in the society feels aggrieved, that the government must address their grievances. And that includes whether any ethnic group or any gender group like women and so on. Unfortunately, again, we wanted that to be actual law, but they put it in the Constitution, but it's not enforceable. It's not enforceable. We wanted it to be enforceable. And if that were so, the government would have been by law would have had to address the concerns of African Guyanese and Amerindian Guyanese today. But it's there in the Constitution, but it's not enforceable. Article 13, for example, we wanted to go further than Article 13. We wanted the government to enforce. Article 13 says that the government must bring about a national government. And we wanted that to be enforceable. But again, we got it in, but it is not enforceable. In fact, Article 13 is a compromise. WPA wanted a national government to be legal, to be law, to be part of the Constitution. And the other parties didn't want it, the PNC and the PPP. And so Article 13 was a kind of consensus, a kind of compromise. So we got the national government in, or well, not national government, but national consensus, but it's not enforceable. The WPA wanted it to be enforceable, the other two didn't. The PNC missed the trick there. Had the PNC gone along with the WPA, we might have had a national government as part of the Constitution. But the PNC didn't go along, they went along with the PPP. And so what we got is Article 13, which is good on paper, but it can't be enforced. So you cannot force the PPP to form a national government. But if the WP had its way, it would have been there as part of the Constitution. When the Constitution was finished, and like I said, the WPA got a lot of things in the Constitution that are there. Like I said, a lot of them are not enforceable because the two major parties did not want to go far with constitutional reform. They wanted to tinker with the Constitution. We wanted to change the Constitution, and we end up with compromise. But another example of our role during the Constitution was when the Constitution was finished and they did all the draft and all that stuff. Sister Andaye, the late Sister Andaye, was the person that cleaned up when they finished doing all the draft. She was very good at that. She would take a document and these days we call it editing, but it was more than editing. She cleaned it up for language, for tightness, for repetition, and all of that thing. So the WPA played more than a major role in constitutional reform. I would say we probably played as major role as the two big parties in constitutional reform. And I'm very glad you're asking these questions because we're getting to teach a new generation things that we take for granted, because we are in this bifurcated society. So we think that everything in politics is done by the PPP or the PNC, when that is absolutely untrue. There are other parties and other individuals who have played major roles that is often not known. And it's not known not because people don't know it, scholars and so on, but even scholars sometimes go by word of mouth rather than go and do the research and to bring these things to fore. This program, for example, becomes unique on Wednesday mornings when I come in because invariably you take me down that road, and and so many people have contacted me to say they didn't know this and they didn't know that. So it is a job of scholars really to point out that a lot of things we take for granted in the society, and we take it that it's the two major parties that brought these things into being, that is simply not true. And the whole world, the whole of Guyana, including PNC leaders, did not know that Guyana was the author of the cooperative in Cooperative Republic. didn't know that at all. And it's shocking, but it's true. All right. And so yes, the WPA played a major role in the constitutional reform process the last time around.
As a matter of fact, in boxing they talk about pound for pound. I think pound for pound when we talk about electoral reform in Guyana, the WPA has always been prepared to walk the walk and not only talk the talk. I think if you were to examine the history, at least the little that I know, WPA has stood firmly by its commitment to constitutional reform, forcing the other two major parties to partake in the process, but not be as, what I should say, dedicated to the process as WPA.
But perhaps the word force is not the right word there, not forcing them, but at least getting them to come to the table. You see, when you're a third party and you have no leverage, you really can't. My mind goes back to St. Vincent. I think it was 1972. There was a tie between the two major parties, and Michel, who later became prime minister, but on his own. But in 1972, he won the Grenadine seat, and that was a tiebreaker. And he asked to be prime minister, and he became prime minister with one seat, a third party, one seat, because the other two were tied. And he sided, I think, with the Labour Party, and they got into power, and he became the prime minister, right, with one seat. That happened in 1972. I'm searching my mind to see where a third party struck a hard bargain in any of the Caribbean societies. Yes, in St. Kitts, the last government, you had what they call Team Unity. It was made up of the St. Kitts Labour Party. Sorry, not the Labour Party. They also the Labour Party. It consisted of PAM, which was one of the major parties. Then a Nivision party, and then a third party called the Progressive Labour Party, which was a breakaway from the Labour Party. And the weakest of the three parties was the PLP, but they got the prime ministership. That coalition broke up, and today the Labour Party is back in power. But that was an instance where a third party was able to strike a hard bargain and got the prime ministership. So there have been a couple of instances, but not in Guyana. The UF was able to strike, and the AFC were able to strike good bargains, but they never got the top spot. They never got the top spot.
Thank you.
The WPA, if we trace the WPA lineage back to Guyana break with both the PPP and the PNC in the 1960s, Guyana played a very important role in the PNC government of 64 to 71 when he broke with them. In fact, last night we were talking and he reminded me of his access to the prime minister, or the prime minister's access to him, because I was talking to him over that period. And the Prime Minister Burnham consulted him even more than his own ministers, and of course refused to go into cabinet. And so he was operating outside of cabinet. And all those important committees that he headed up, the committee to create the co-op bank, land reform, and all those things, the foreign policy to Africa, and all those things. He did it outside of the party, GMC, heading GMC. Did them outside of the party. He never rejoined the PNC and never went into cabinet. But he had a tremendous impact on the policies of the government. And it was because of the personal relationship with himself and Burnham. In fact, we were joking last night that Burnham wanted a telephone to be installed at Guyanese's house, and so that he can be in touch with him. Of course, Guyanese said he didn't want any phone at his house. The phone was installed at County High School. and when Guyana and Burnham broke in 71, the telephone company sent him a bill. He said, well, the phone was installed at the school, not at my house. Because, of course, the school was always open. And people would go in there and make calls to Mackenzie and made calls to this place and that place. But I give that anecdote to say that the lesson of third parties has to be seen through a person like Guyana, who was able to impact government not as the head of a party, but he was the head of ASCRIA, which functioned like a party. It functioned like a political party, although it was not a political party. Didn't have seats in parliament and all of that, but a tremendous impact on the direction and the content of government. And I think that period of 1961 to 1971, well, Guyana joined in 1958, the PNC, when it was founded in 57, sorry. That period was perhaps the best period for African Guyanese, because the two major leaders in the community, the cultural leader and the political leader, worked together. And the cultural leader was not a cultural leader of song and dance, but it was a political cultural group. ASCRIA was a political cultural group. And so we had an instance there. Guyana himself was like a third party. Wherever he went, whether it was in the WP, outside of the WPA, he functioned as a third party. But it wasn't so much the seats in parliament, but it's his ability to impact policy in the government. And he was able to do that between 57 and 71 in the PNC.
Thank you again. As you're talking about the impact of what do you see on governments, well, in particular the PNC government. I remember after the change of government and so on, the first person or only person perhaps to take a minister of the sitting government to court and to the ombudsman for corrupt practices was Brother U.C. Guyana. I'm talking, I think, was it Nocta at the time? I can't remember if it was Nocta, but it was the Minister of Public Works. A car was acquired in the name of his son from a leading contractor at the time. I remember that matter being taken either to the Ombudsman or the courts. What the Public Procurement Commission? Do you have any history of the Public Procurement Commission? Where that came from and what were the?
Well, that's a new phenomenon in the new constitution. It's a new.
That's what I'm trying to find out.
Well, it's a product of the constitutional reform. I can't remember what role we played in that. I rather suspect it was all the parties were forming it. So that's how it got there. But remember, it took a long time for them to implement it, because people like Public Procurement Commission when they're out of office, and once they come into office, they want to do it differently. So a Public Procurement Commission become a humbug. So it wasn't implemented for a long time, but it was something that all the parties, as I remember it, contributed to.
All right, good. I said,
but you mentioned Guyana as an anti-corruption advocate, and you mentioned Nocta. That was in the 1990s, but Guyana's anti-corruption activity go right back to the 1960s. In fact, he broke with the PNC on the issue of corruption, and he got the PNC government at that time to implement the Force Integrity Commission, because he went to Burnham as he was receiving complaints about corruption in government, in the PNC government. And he asked Burnham to set up an integrity commission. Burnham did. The only problem with the integrity commission is that Burnham was not subject to it, because the ministers had to declare their assets to Burnham. And I remember as a small boy hearing my auntie and them say, well, who Burnham go declare your asset to? You go watch yourself in the mirror and say, I declare my assets. I remember distinctly as a little 9-10-year-old hearing my auntie saying that in the house. But so that Force Integrity Commission set up by the PNC was the product of Guyane's advocacy. They eventually broke, and he took up one of the government ministers before the ombudsman in a very famous case. In fact, there's a letter in yesterday's paper by the civil engineer in the Ministry of Works and Hydraulics at the time, Charles Sohan, on the issue. He didn't mention Guyana taking the case to the ombudsman. Either he was being politically correct and didn't want to raise controversy, or the papers may have cut that part off. Guyana and I were discussing it last night. Because these days, as you know, he doesn't see well. And so we all take turns in reading things to him. So last night was my turn to go through the papers, yesterday's papers with him. But he was very instrumental. He took that Minister of Works before the ombudsman for a steel sheet piling case. And like I said, if viewers read yesterday's papers, the matter was raised there. But it was a big case. It was a big case. But that case was as a result of, or resulted in the break between Guyana and Burnham.
Which of yesterday's paper? And can you give us a synopsis, if I can ask about because some of us wouldn't even go and look for it.
Well, I don't want, it's controversial, and I don't want to raise that here this morning, because those things get people quarreling among themselves. It was Minister Hamilton Green who was accused of using government steel sheet piling on his personal property, and Guyana took it to the ombudsman, and the ombudsman found that the minister did not act in accordance with the law. Hamilton Green was however, how should I put it? The Prime Minister who had the last say. We can remember I said the Integrity Commission in those days. The Prime Minister had the last say. And Hamilton Green was not punished. David Singh, who was another minister, he was involved. He was heading one ministry, and I'm trying to remember the ministry he was heading. But David Singh was sent as ambassador to China. He was removed from his ministerial position. Hami was removed from Works and Hydraulics, and I think he was put at Minister of Mobilization. So those were the actions taken by Burnham. But neither of the two men lost office. Like I said, David Singh was demoted from minister to ambassador, and Hami was moved from Ministry of Works and Hydraulics to Minister of Mobilization. As I said, yesterday's Stabrook News, there's a letter there by Charles Sohan. Do not throw stones if you live in glass houses, or if you have skeleton in your cupboards. He was directing it at Hami. And but that was a big issue at that time. Can you imagine now, when you see what the PPP government is doing now, that steel sheet piling case or the Nocta case pale in insignificance. That was Sunday school to what's happening now. Yeah, but yes, Guyana was always Guyana's foremost anti-corruption advocate.
Thank you. I did hint earlier that I was going to ask you to address the taking of seats with them when parliamentarians change allegiance, let me call it that, taking their seats with them. You mentioned the formation of the AFC, Temraj Ramjatan, Sheila Ola, and Raphael Trotman. As I remember, all three of those persons were sitting members of parliament, one sitting on a PNC seat, WPA seat, PPP seat. And they left parliament to form the AFC. Well, they went and they formed the third party, fourth party, whichever, the AFC. And perhaps all three of them refused to give up their seats, or was it two?
All three of them refused to give up their seats. In fact, that is what caused the PNC and the PPP to agree on something. Rarely they agreed on anything, and they agreed on that, and they passed legislation permitting the head of the list of a party to recall a parliamentarian so that a parliamentarian cannot take the seat. I remember Raphael Trotman, and I'm trying to remember whether he said so publicly or he said it privately to me, or semi-privately. But I remember Raphael Trotman being the only one who indicated a willingness to return his seat to the PNC. Temraj or Sheila didn't indicate the same. I think Raphael may have done it publicly. I'm trying to search my mind. I think he may have hinted publicly that he was prepared to give up his seat if the other two agreed. But the other two didn't agree, so the AFC ended up with 3 seats in that parliament, which belonged to other political parties. And that led to the legislation to recall. But you see, even with a recall legislation, we have problems. We've had 2 problems since then. One, the seat held by Sister Tabitha that was earmarked for the WPA, but the WPA left the coalition. And so the WPA is without any representation in Parliament. And the question was, who can recall Tabitha? And who is she representing? And is the WPA entitled to a seat if it left the coalition? All those are questions that are there. And then we have the other case of the doctor who is sitting on the seat. So even though you have recall legislation, when you go in, because remember the WPA was part of the APNU, didn't contest on its own. So it doesn't have any claim to a seat on its own. It can only claim a seat as part of the APNU. And that is left to the head of the APNU list, Mr. Granger, whether he sees it that way. He obviously doesn't see it that way. And so the WPA wasn't given the seat. And then in the case of the joinder, they went in as the joinder. The joinder doesn't have any head of any head of their list because they didn't contest as a joinder. So Dr. Kissoon can only be recalled by the head of the list of our party, TNM. And they have been able to figure out yet who's the head of the list of the TNM. Because they said the head of the list of the TNM is no longer part of the party. The party doesn't really exist. And so she's sitting in Parliament. So even though you have recall legislation, it's difficult to recall people when you have this coalition and joinder and those things.
Well, I'm trying to remember. I think it was in the election cases that went all the way to the CCJ. Didn't the CCJ pronounce on that recall legislation as perhaps unconstitutional?
No. You have recall legislation all over the world.
Okay, good. Let's turn to unless there's anything else you want to add to that little bit of history and political maneuverings that we were talking about. Let's talk about the International People, the International Decade for People of African Descent Assembly taking place currently, and first and foremost, the representation there, government's representation. Have you paid
Sorry.
attention to what they call them again? The delegation looks like?
Well, your audience may chide you and said you didn't listen to Politics 101 last night. Because that's what we dealt with last night on Politics 101. There are two delegations. There's a delegation from the government led by Minister Waldron. It includes Minister Joseph Hamilton and a few others. And it also includes Eric Phillips as the Reparations Committee member. And then you have an Ipadaji delegation, which includes Nigel Hughes, Darren Wade, and Olive Sampson. Vincent Alexander should have been there, but he did not get his visa on time, so he was not there. So it opened yesterday, and Minister Waldron spoke on behalf of Guyana. She said Guyana is committed to reparations, and that there is a motion before the Assembly for a second decade for the people of African descent, and that she said the Guyana government is committed to supporting a second decade.
Niasaban, I think a lot of us have a concern.
Niasaban is part of it. And the head of, well, not the head, the deputy head or member of the ERC. Niasaban is part of the ERC too. This other Rastafarian chap,
Raskafra
is also part of the delegation.
How do we I am looking for words here, but how do we sit comfortably? Let me just say that with Nias Suban representing people of African descent at that assembly, or the government of Guyana at that assembly.
Well, the government of Guyana has behaved in that way. It has not honored African Guyanese leadership. We go back to when they were building that 1823 monument. The African Guyanese organizations wanted a monument at Parade Ground. And the government wanted it at the seawall. They built it at the seawall, despite the fact that the black organizations said they wanted it. So this government has never respected bona fide black organizations. And so we have the comical thing of Indian Guyanese being on a delegation that has to do with black people business. Only in Guyana. Only in Guyana.
Any surprise?
There's a total lack of respect for African Guyanese.
Any surprise that Eric Phillips is part of the government's
Eric's thing is tricky. The government has signed on to CARICOM reparations initiative. Eric is the vice chair of the CARICOM Reparations Commission. So he's part of the delegation as a CARICOM representation, not the Guyana representation. But of course, it's the Guyana government that has to pay for him to go there. So his presence at the conference technically is there as CARICOM, not Guyana government.
Thank you. All right, it's 8:22. It's about time for us to open up the lines and hear what the viewers have to say in relation to these topics raised this morning. Let me first pay some bills and then we'll open up the lines. Doctor, is there anything you want to say before I go there?
No, I guess I'll get an opportunity to speak in between the calls.
Yes, certainly. Let's pay some bills. You know, we got to pay bills. Because according to Hey fans, It's karaoke and oldies night this and every Thursday at Club Twilight Sideline Dam, Buxton. Dance to the magical songs of yesteryear by popular DJs and Camps Audio. Admission is free. Come out. Let's make memories at Club Twilight Sideline Dam, Buxton North. You can get meat anywhere, but for the best cuts of chicken, beef, pork, mutton, and lots more, check out T and W Harris Butcher Shop, located in the East Ramveld Market Meat Section. Call us on 609-7168, 641-4494. Ask for Rastaman. T and W Harris Butcher Shop for the best in fresh cut meats and lots more.
Comes up.
And let me inform you that the PNC has a bingo, as some people would say. When I was growing up and you're advertising bingo, 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 bingo. Yes, the PNC has bingo, and it's coming up on the 26th of May. That's Independence Day, is it? At Congress Place, they have a fundraising bingo. $6,000 for a ticket. A ticket will get you 6 playing cards. Yes, one ticket will get you 6 playing cards, and you have 20 straight games at $1 million. No, I'm lying. At 20 straight games at $100,000 each. 3-letter games at $200,000, and the 3 coverall games at $1 million per game. That is real big money. So come out and support the PNCR big fundraising bingo on the 26th of May. And the game starts at 2 p.m. Right? 2 p.m. the game starts. Listen, I'm not a bingo fan. I played bingo as a youth man. We used to play cash bingo, 25 cents a game and 10 cents a game and so on. I used to play that kind of bingo. But with this kind of money, trust me, I go into the PNC bingo. I don't know what I don't do about it. And I come into winter. Right? I come into win, so I'm gonna ensure a bid in South Water, Blue Soap and anyhow, the bingo is on the 26th. You guys should really support the thing. And of course, here at Club Twilight, there is Thursday night oldies and karaoke. That is tomorrow. Then we're talking about Mother's Day brunch, and also Mother's Day lunch basket. The lunch basket caters for 3. And you're going to have a variety of stuff inside, including rotisserie chicken, grilled fish, some kind of rice, one beverage, whether you want it alcoholic or non-alcoholic, some chocolate, and usual salads and lasagna. Yes, lasagna is definitely a part of the package. Good. First call on the line. Call the line.
Good morning, Kadaki, and good morning, Dr. Hines. Good morning to all the listeners. It's a beautiful day. Dr. Hines, what I have learned, about the CIA, even if Burnham and Jagan, right, are collated in those days, I think the U.S. would have still formed a third party, because they don't lead. They don't want nobody who have a nationalist policy that will, go against what America stands for and what America wants. But despite all of that, despite the geopolitics and everything, we in Guyana still have hope to run our country. And that hope is to come together, is coalition, come together. And the big thing, that is the big thing, coming together is a big thing right now in Guyana. We still can't see eye to eye as people. I am surprised that our Indian brothers, a lot of them, they vote for the PPP. And when the PPP get in government and the hell get hot, they leave Guyana and they go away. And when the opposition, when the coalition is in power, they come back because they feel that it's more safe that time to be in Guyana and so on. So I'm saying that to say our politics is very complicated in Guyana, real complicated. We have a lot of work to do. The other thing is I want to touch a little on is the people that the government use to send to the United Nations conference there on slavery and reparation. It is really surprising how Black people, I would say, find themselves or really don't understand how we are being used, right, to persecute each other in Guyana. And then they use us to go out there and tell lies and put a clean slate and a dry face. It's amazing how we are still being, manipulated into these positions. I don't understand why we cannot see. We cannot see where we're being used. And I think the PPP they only want reparation because they want the money to teach. And that's straight. They don't have nothing about give the money where it's supposed to be going to. They hear about that big money, 721 billion pounds and whatever it is, and they say, wow. The Bible says, fool and his money. The Bible said, he that loves money never get enough of it. He that loves wealth never satisfied with his income. And Ecclesiastes 5:10 talk about that, And lastly, how are we I want to ask this question to all of us in Guyana. Are we going to go into election without the voters list and biometrics? I think that's a very, very dangerous precedence going ahead. That's all I have to say, and thank you for giving me the time. Thank you.
Thank you for your call. Dr. Hines, you want to respond?
Well, caller raised some very, very important questions there. Look, we have always been able to find Black people who work against the collective interests of Black people. And I don't know what to do about that. A friend and I were discussing that thing about a week ago, and we were wondering whether, something has messed with our heads, Slavery, we cannot underestimate the impact of slavery on the thinking of our people, This mode of personal survival as opposed to the survival of the collective has always been an issue for us, more than other groups. So people from other groups cross and work against the interests of groups, but it seems to be more pervasive among Black people all over the world. And that is why, we have to persistently deal with the question of consciousness. We can't let up. And the risk of dealing with consciousness is that you're then labeled racist. Because you have to keep on Black people on a daily basis and remind them that there is something about their Blackness that demands that they act in a certain way. And it's something that you have to do day in, day out. You can't let up in a way that you can let up in other ethnic groups and know that they will behave in the interest of their group. The Black people, the minute you lapse, they find some justification for working against the interests of the group. I am not saying that the problem is one that cannot be contained, but it calls for a lot of work, a lot of persistent work. And that is why I am raising my voice so loud and trying to say to the PNC activists, I'm directing it more at them, the PNC leaders and activists who I think are messed up when it comes to the race question. they don't help the situation because of their rhetoric. This rhetoric that that dismisses black people condition. Black people suffering, but other races suffering, and that thing, I think, leads our people astray, and that is why I'm trying to. I'm trying my best to get the PNC leaders, especially the younger ones, to break out of that thing. There's a way to deal with the issue of black people, and then the issue of poor people and Guyanese people in general. It's not impossible. Like I said, you start always that all poor people suffer, whether they're black, brown, Amerindian, Chinese, Portuguese, all poor people are catching hell. And then you go on to say, but the fact is that black people catching hell is a particular catching hell that needs a particular treatment, a particular analysis, a particular government intervention. And I think if we go there, then it makes it easier to balance the two. The problem is that if you remember the PNC, you sacrifice black people, but that then opens the way. I never like this thing to tell black people, go take the people money and then you know where to vote. And I know our comrades in the PNC, that's their rhetoric, go take the money. My thing is that don't go and take any money. Government monies, you are entitled to it. You don't have to go and take it. And government ought to give you money as part of government policy, not give you money as part of bribe. They give you money as part of bribe, don't take it. And I'm not saying that my PNC comrades are telling our people to take bribe money. But when you say take the money, you know where to vote. You give them the opening to go and take bribe money. You see? And so I think this loose political talk from our political leaders in the big party, this timid talk, contributes to black people behaving in compromising ways, But it's a problem we have in the black community. We have to face it. We have to face it, and we have to keep working and working day in, day out. We have to dedicate part of our activism to it. Like I said, the risk is that you're going to be called racist, But you have to press on because it's a serious problem. It's a serious problem. The question of whether we go into an election with a voters list that is so screwed up that we lose before we start is a real question. And again, we have to decide whether that's where we're going. What are the benefits and the downsides of that?
Morning, my neighbor, morning, morning. Now you morning, neighbor, morning, neighbor. How are you doing? Morning, it's Thursday morning. It's the 18th day of April in the year 2024. It is 7 hours 32. I am your host, Kidaki Amsterdam. Welcome to another program. Welcome to another program of Guyanese Morning Time. How have you been? How was you yesterday? I know we had an interesting discourse here yesterday. I know a lot of people are more aware now than they were in terms of the roles WPA and WPA members have played over the years in trying to fix this broken country that we have constitutionally and otherwise. That is just the tip of the iceberg, as they say. Those who, the older folks will tell you, like Mr. Noel and so on, can actually give you sometimes a ball-by-ball play of WPA over the years, right? But I particularly enjoyed that discussion yesterday, and I've been enjoying the discussions in the last 2 weeks or so because it is giving, those discussions are giving young people in particular, people in general, a lot of older folks, perspectives, giving them a clear understanding of what really is WPA, what WPA stands for, how WPA has contributed to the growth and development of the nation, and so on and so forth. right? So I know yesterday a lot of you got some nuggets. I hope you will be able to share those nuggets with others, because one of the problem in this society is a lot of people don't pay too much attention. A lot of people seem not to know what happens around them. The history of this country is not known. The history of this country is not known. What you have is snippets, especially when you come to the political history. We have even the economic history. We have is somebody choosing to tell their side of the story. They're not choosing to tell the whole story. They're choosing to tell their side of the story, and everybody is telling a part of the story and leaving out critical elements of the story. And so if you were to listen to that one side of the story, then you go away believing that, hey, this is all there is to it. As they say, until the hunted tells the story, the hunter. Until the hunted tells the story, the hunter will always be the victim, right? And so sometimes, like Winston Jordan asked a few weeks ago, or a few programs ago, should we always listen to or read the history of Ghana from the perspective, from the point of view of the other person or the other people? Where are our Guyanese writers? And I'm saying Guyanese writers because I'm talking about people who will write the history of this country, political and economic and social and otherwise, from a Guyanese point of view, not from an ethnic point of view, not from an I point of view, but from a Guyanese point of view, taking into account all of the variables that has brought us where we are thus far. Right? I want to know that. Moses Nagamoto has launched a number of books and relaunched a number of books. So that is Moses' point of view. The Western trial is Jagan's point of view. Where are the points of views of people on the opposite side? Let's say that. We have to start to tell our stories. There's a lot to the political history of this country that a lot of Guyanese don't know. A lot of elders self don't know. Some of them were in the middle of it all and they didn't and still don't understand what they were in the middle of. Right? Nevertheless, along that same line of history and people not telling the story, this morning, if you notice, the title of the program is Failings. Failings. Excuse me. We've had a lot of failings in this society over the years. We have failed to teach our children the true and correct history. In our schools, there's nothing like Guyanese history that is taught, right? Well, I am being inaccurate. There is now a textbook called Ghana or Country or Home. I think that book is used maybe in the primary school. But there's no in-depth teaching of Guyanese history when you get to secondary school, let's say. From the time you hit secondary school, you're doing Caribbean history. And so a lot of people can tell you all that went on in the Caribbean, but they know nothing about what went on in Ghana. And I think if we have an understanding of the history, or if we taught the history as it should be taught, we'll have an appreciation of the contribution of each of Guyana's people. And that might lead to more respect. Not necessarily more love, but more respect. Good. What's happening that we have to talk about? Let's talk about first and foremost. Oh, Dubai, Dubai. A lot of people have been sending me videos. Dubai is underwater. Dubai is underwater. The good Christians will tell you it's the Lord's work because mankind flying in the face of God. Good Christians will tell you that. My simple response to what happened in Dubai is, and a lot of people don't like me when I get there. That is rich people problem. That is rich people problem. The rich, the over rich, the super rich, the excessively rich are now living in a ghetto named Dubai. Right? Why do I say that? They are now understanding, well, I presume that they didn't understand before, what it is to be inconvenienced by power outage, blackout as we say in Ghana. They're now understanding what it is to be affected by flood waters. Right? A lot of them are experiencing floods and blackout and these inconveniences that the ghetto people are always experiencing for the most part. For the first time, or one of the rare times. Right? So rich people now could appreciate, hey, this is what life in blackout and floods look like. But on the flip side, it's possible that a whole lot of them got yachts, so they can just get in the yacht and go sailing. Yeah, with this damn nonsense, man. I go in and sail. By the time I come back, they're going to fix the problem. Right? But the reality is, a good friend and viewer said, no, Mr. Amsterdam, this is a world problem, not rich people problem. Because I think Japan had earthquake and so on. And I'm maintaining, yes, rich people problem. A lot of the issues we are confronted with environmentally are man-made. Man has created them. Who funds all of these tinkering of nature? Tinkering with nature? Rich people. The pandemic the other day, not so long ago in the event, around 2020, and so on and so forth. It's not something that resulted from nature. It's mankind tinkering. Who funds research into genetically modifying plants and so on? That's GMO. Who is thinking of cloning this and cloning that and cloning the other? I see the other day, I can't remember which, but one of the, can't remember if it were the Chinese, who were saying that they have successfully modified, I think, the pig's liver as a replacement in humans, or to be used as a replacement in humans. Right? It's a rich people problem. Them boys got enough money, so they want to play God. They want changes, they want changes. What is Dubai? Isn't Dubai, y'all got to forgive my ignorance here, if I come across as ignorant. But I don't know if it's an island, but I know it's a man-made landmass. Isn't that so? Isn't it a land-made landmass? And whoever said that you could cheat nature? Because you got enough money, you think you could cheat nature? Water especially, water doesn't forget its old ways. Understand that. Guyanese are complaining about the heat. People are saying it's a different heat. It's a strange heat that we're feeling. I usually argue, Guyanese know about sun, man. We go up in sun. We run around in sun, man. And so when this generation are in sun hot, we want to know what they're talking about. But the reality is the truth. There's a different heat. And many are attributing it to first and foremost global warming. Secondly, up close and personal, sun flaring. And who are the people flaring and allowing flaring to take place? Who are the people engaged in the extractive industries and so on that are producing tons upon tons upon tons upon tons of carbon monoxide and so on, and other gases that are interfering with the, I would say, natural makeup of the atmosphere and the stratosphere and the geosphere and all the spheres. And the same rich people are funding research to tell you that, hey, what we're doing is not affecting anything. There's nothing like global warming. But Guyanese are feeling the heat right now. Guyanese are feeling the heat. People are feeling the heat the world over. Mr. Dunstug, Mr. Illiterate, your presidents, was quick to point out to the BBC's journalists, we got so many million hectares of land, forest, forever, that can take care of this pollution that we're creating by oil exploration forever. I've never heard a more ignorant statement than that one in recent times when it comes to global warming, etc. Forever? We don't have the forest forever. Because if you don't take care of the forest, you're allowing the Malayan and so on and people to fell trees and extract logs and so on and ship them out and so on and so forth. There's no way you can have it forever. There's no way you can be reducing the size of your rainforest through timber harvesting and so on. Increasing pollutants in the atmosphere and expect that the rainforest is going to be able to continue to save you. Rich people problem. Rich people that get a certain degree of arrogance that only they could understand. Right? And so when I give that short response to things like these, those are some of my thought processes. I ain't gonna go deep into the scientific. I just go logical. Right? So rich people problem. Somebody said, don't worry, man. A quick time, and imagine there's 12 hours of rain. But they say the 12 hours of rain was equivalent to a year's worth of rain in that short space of time. Right? In that short space of time. And so while we're building all of these magnificent structures, and there are lessons there for Guyana, you know, while we're building all of these magnificent structures as in Dubai, and let's teleport to Guyana. While we're building all these quote-unquote magnificent structures in Guyana, there's some very simple and important elements that we don't pay attention to. All the pile driving that will take place to build these high-rise buildings and so on How is it affecting displacement of earth and water? Guyana is already below sea level. Some say 7 feet, some say 9, some say 6, all kinds of things. But displacement is taking place. As a matter of fact, I got a letter from a community. Let me see if I can find that letter as we talk. About the construction of a hospital in a neighborhood, I think, of the East Bank there, one of those gated communities, I think. And they're destroying people's homes by pile driving, etc. Right? So pile driving creates displacement. How is that affecting the ecological balance? Land clearing, for example, we're talking about Silica City. How is the ecological balance affected? That is the role of EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. They're supposed to do these environmental impact assessments so they can have a projection and understanding of what will change in the general ecology, in the general atmosphere, in the general area. What will change? And how those changes will affect mankind especially. But when you have certain projects being developed, because again, rich people doing it, and they could pay off somebody, or they got somebody who is in high office who could call somebody, you hear, there's no need for an environmental impact assessment for this project. And then later down, as the project proceeds, you come to realize all of the problems that will be created by the project. But it is already far advanced. And even fighting up for an EIA then will not make any difference. Right? So again, I'm saying, rich people's problem. Is the rich building high rises in Ghana, the rich building plant facilities in Ghana, here, there, and everywhere, is the rich land grabbing and so on. But in all of that, when they're doing, even the government has gotten rich now with oil money, and they are on a particular trajectory. They call it developmental. But look at their developmental models and project in your minds how much problems they're going to be creating down the line. Look at the railway line, for example, the railway embankment that they say they're creating a 4-lane highway. Have you seen how the drains have gotten smaller? Right? I'm accustomed to, and I'm sure you're accustomed to seeing wide drains or wide waterways alongside the embankment. And if those waterways couldn't adequately remove the water, let's say in a solid May, June rainy season. Now they have reduced them. What do you expect to happen? What do you expect to happen with reduced capacity from these drains? When you get some serious shower, then you're going to understand the harm, the disservice that your government has been doing to you. Right? I want you to understand that. So look across your country and see how they are reducing the waterways. And forecast about the problems that they're creating for you. PPP, as a government over the years, has shown that they really don't care about maintaining anything. You know. Right? They don't maintain much. They might build, but maintenance is a problem. They don't maintain anything. Very little is spent on maintenance. They will build. And that which was built before, they won't take care of. Margaret said it becomes everyone's problems. Yeah, rich people's problems is everyone's problems. But rich people creating problems for everyone. Yeah. So we have to look at that. And citizens have to, I mean, there's the importance of agencies like the Environmental Protection Agency, because they're supposed to be out there investigating, listening to citizens' concerns, addressing citizens' concerns, and so on. But again, because of the nature of the governance which we have in this country, those agencies don't function. And since those agencies don't function, the wrongs are perpetrated and perpetuated, because it's done over and over and over and over. And because these people really and truly believe that money answereth all things, they don't care. Right at Islington and more north there, in the middle of a built-up area, I'm reminded there's a spray shop there, spray paint place. Several people in the area have complained for an excessively long time to the EPA. And nothing was being done to it. When the coalition was in government, it appeared as though the EPA was going to do its work. They had started sending them notices and investigation and so on. But perhaps government changed in 2020. Perhaps that was the end of it. I'll be time now. And so you have in the middle of a residential area. I don't know if they got any intelligent person there, you know. I'm sure they should have. There are a lot of intelligent people in the society. It is how they use their intelligence. That's what we have to concern ourselves about. So yes, every time now. And so nobody is taking actions to ensure that the owners of that spray do the correct thing. A whole lot of people are being affected by the fumes that come from the spray, the paint. And that's only one example. That's only one example. Guyanese have to hold these agencies and the government accountable. We're too laid back. We are laid back for everything. We're too laid back. Everything we're laid back for. Know very well the impact on our lives and quality of life. Or we pretend that we don't know. In which other territory a government is allowed to embrace misbehavior by the moneyed class and they don't end up with a riot from the working class or citizens in general? There was a time when there were zoning laws in this country. As a matter of fact, I think they have to be on the books still. Certain communities were designated, what we call them? Looking for the right word. Non-commercial. They were strictly for living. So when you finish with your hustle and bustle in downtown Georgetown, you work hard, you get a headache, you go home, you could have a quiet evening. The Sobrianvilles and the Campbellvilles and y'all know that, the Prashad Nagars and so on and so forth. And I perhaps can argue that held true right up to when Desmond White left office. Some of you are older than I am and might be more aware, can tell me if I'm accurate. the bylaws were observed more in the right than in the wrong. Now you see more breaches than compliance. So certain areas were strictly non-commercial, residential. That's the word I'm looking for. Sometimes I'm tired. Residential. And so you couldn't open a shop at your bottom house. Sometimes I'm tempted to tell this one apartment and all kind of thing. Right? You couldn't open a shop at your bottom house because mayor and town council or mayor and city council, the public health inspectors would have been at your door, backed by the law, backed by the civil authorities, as in the Guyana police and so on, to ensure compliance. But once people start, or I should say a certain group of people start making money from the illicit drug trade and so on, everybody was up for sale. You're making joke when you're earning $40,000 a month and a man come and throw $140,000 in your desk and say, that is you. Just sign the document and let it go and do my thing. A whole lot of public servants and officials who were once law-abiding citizens became corrupted and compromised, and the bylaws start going through the door. Not that the bylaws are not there, but the enforcement start going through the door. When you call and complain to the authorities, some of them abuse you. Some of them come and say they will write their report. You never know what the report was written. But you don't see any changes. Because what? Money runs things. Money answereth all things. Permanent Shiv, not you don't know me by. So shut your mouth. You don't know me. I ain't even sure you know about me. I'm sure the one thing people can say on this program, I beat left, right, and center. As they say, beat and teach. And so when the coalition was in government and things weren't going right, people know that I talked. People know that David Hines talked. I want a better Guyana. I always say that. I don't care, quite frankly, who runs Guyana, so long as it's good governance for all the people. So yes, next commercial properties started showing up in residential areas. Alleyways start getting blocked. I remember a particular case right on Sheriff Street. I think at that time, I don't think it was the sheriff establishment, but there's an establishment right there on Sheriff Street in that same sheriff block where the alleyways were blocked. Construction took place in the alleyways and blocked it. Initially, the residents were up in arms. City Council intervened a number of times. I don't know if y'all could remember that. But check and see the end result. Businessmen started blocking alleyways. Alleyways were meant to give you free access from one corner of one block to the other. Not only were the drainage and so on in those alleyways not maintained, but they became dumping grounds for city businesses. And the drains became clogged. And so when it rained, things got bad. Look around your community, look around your society, and see where the residential areas are now. Right? You now have gated communities. So the original residential areas are now replaced by gated communities because you got over-rich. New people getting rich through illicit and other means. And so we're creating problems for ourselves. A lot of people are not acknowledging the creation of those problems, but I know they are there. We're disregarding the wisdom of old, and we're disregarding infrastructure of old. Look around the Caribbean. And Guyana, well, technically Guyana is no Caribbean country, but we always accept being Caribbean, as they say, because of heritage, colonial heritage, and so on. Look around the Caribbean, including Guyana, and see which nation has shown the least respect for its colonial history in terms of infrastructure. You like to talk about how the Dutch established the drainage and canals and reclaimed land from the sea and so on and so forth. See how we have failed to maintain those infrastructure, which kept us, in many instances, safe and well drained and so on. But outside of that, look at how we have disrespected our heritage. In other territories, as we say, the colonial style buildings are tourist attractions. They are well curated, they are well taken care of, they are well maintained. Near to or in their original forms. But in Ghana, as certain people started getting rich, they start getting new money through the illicit, mainly illicit, underground, dark, corrupt economies. What did they start to do? Buy up the colonial properties or the colonial style properties, dismantle them, and turn them into some concrete jungles. Some people might say concrete eyesores. Look around your society and see how it has been happening. How your landscape, your airline, as they say, your skyline has been changing over the years. The disappearance of your colonial architecture, which is a part of your history. Your next generation will not be able to see or know anything about your colonial architecture except maybe on books. Y'all remember the New Amsterdam Hospital? That beautifully crafted structure there, or the PPP abandoned it and left it to vagrants. If that is too far, y'all look at Starbuck Market. A section of the wharf, I think, fell. Was the wharf here yesterday? Everybody sending photograph. It fall. Some reports said people were trapped under. Eventually, reports said nobody was injured. Those are assets of the nation which are left to rot and disappear. And so the nation doesn't benefit from it. Why? Rich people problem. Why is rich people problem? Because as far as some people are concerned, if you can get rid of certain facilities or the occupants of certain facilities, then those facilities will now be available to rich people to do as they like. first and foremost. That is why a lot of neglect take place. So after neglect, people come in as saviors to take over. Kitty Market. I remember when Kitty Market was falling apart. Kitty Market got rescued by the coalition government. I don't think the project there was continued. Now, vendors in Kitty Market are complaining that it appears as though they will have to be moved. They're being threatened with removal. I saw an ignoramus comment yesterday that the collapse of the roof or the section of Starbuck is City Council's problem. It's not central government one. But I'm here to argue that it's central government problem. Overlooked perhaps by City Council. Why? You see, you have to understand government and the tiers of government. The city government is responsible for the maintenance of those properties, yes. The city government is responsible for the collection of rates and taxes, yes. The city government has authority in the city, yes. But central government has authority over the city government in this instance. It's not I make the local government act. Y'all can't blame me. In order for the city government to adjust rates and taxes in the city, they must get a blessing of central government. The city government cannot do an assessment and say, well, this property that was paying $10 in 1970 as a domestic, as a residential property, must now pay $90 because it is now used for a commercial property. The only way that assessment is allowed is if central government sanctions it. What has been happening over the years? City council has not been able to, the city government has not been able to adjust rates and taxes in keeping with the change of use of many of the buildings in and around the city. Number one. Number two, city council has not been able to get central government to pay to it taxes owed by central government. And that runs into hundreds of billions or millions of dollars. One would believe that central government's taxes is a major source of income or financing, let's say, for the city government. And so when central government refuses to pay those taxes, it means that the city government is hamstrung, because two things are happening there. The taxes that they're collecting from city dwellers are woefully inadequate because they're not collected at the real rates. So they are disadvantaged there. And then central government withholds hundreds of millions of dollars from them in taxes. They're further disadvantaged. And so they have a resource problem. They can't maintain nothing. And so things which perhaps are not seen as essential are left to rot and collapse, like the section yesterday. And so people say city council is inept. City council is not doing what city council has to do or is supposed to do. But how many of us are turning our eyes to the actions of central government and saying central government is the cause of many of the city's problems? Let me explain further for you. There's no doubt that most of the major businesses in the city are owned by friends of the government or friends of operatives of the government. And the city council or the city government is currently controlled by opponents of the government. And so if city council is made to function and function properly, then they look good. Central government doesn't want the city government to look good, number one. Number two, the friends and acolytes of the government operating in the city as business people don't want to pay their fair share of taxes. And since they are financial contributors to the government or the party in government, then they lobby them to prevent city council, city government being able to raise the taxes, etc., so that they can get their fair share. And so what does central government do? Every time the city says, we need, there's a word they use to, I will use reevaluate. We need to reevaluate the rates of taxes being paid in the city. Central government says, not under our watch. I can tell you again, and that is why the quality of governance that you have will determine the quality of life you live. And that is why I will always argue here, to the distaste of permanent and elects, that the coalition has been a superior government to PPP. Because when the coalition was in office, it was taking steps to ensure that citizens pay fair rates of taxes. For example, they had engaged, I can't remember if it was a UK company, to do an assessment in New Amsterdam area, I think, or somewhere in Barbies. They were supposed to do assessments for rates and taxes purposes, revaluing property purposes in the towns. I think they were to start in Barbies. The PPP in opposition said, we are against it, and as soon as we get into office, we will stop it. Go check the history. Miranda Brown is there. Ask Miranda. The project was never continued. And so the rates and taxes being paid in New Amsterdam, for example, in Barbies, for example, Rosignol and so on, the towns and so on, are woefully inadequate because they are paying 1960 rates. Buildings that were once residential are cottages, are now multi-storied commercial properties, but they're still paying residential cottage rates. Now, in case you don't see what's happening there, businesses generate more garbage. Businesses demand more service. Businesses use more electricity. Businesses use more water, and so on and so forth. Businesses create more pollution. And so they make a bigger draw on the resources of city government or local government. But when local government has to provide services with higher demands now and continue to collect rates at residential rate, how are they going to do what they are supposed to do? But no, because city council, because local government, but because in central government. And the ignorers who represent central government come here and they tell you that is a city council problem. Them black man can't run nothing. Them black man can't run nothing. Right? And lots of you, like this one, permanent, come out and say what? This man is a good example of sour grapes. The government cannot do anything right for him. The government doesn't do anything right for him. And if the coalition were in office, then he would have said differently. But like I just tell y'all, he's a man who starts for rain and a man who starts for sun. I'm looking for this particular letter, but I'm not finding it. How did it get to me? And why am I not finding it? I think I found it. Let me share this letter with you. Providence Gardens Community Group. Plantation Providence, East Bank, Demerara. Address to Kemach Parsram, Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer, EPA. Reference: establishment of hospital facility adjacent to Providence Gardens community. The matter caption refers: it has been reported widespread by media houses in Guyana that there are plans surrounding the construction of a super specialty hospital by a private entity. In fact, as you are aware, the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, by way of public notice, which no longer appears on its website, purportedly waived the requirement for an environmental impact assessment for the construction and operations of the said hospital. From what is visible, the hospital is currently under construction at parcel number 3870, block III zone, East Bank, Demerara, Plantation Providence in the Providence Gardens community. Following commencement of construction, and particularly in recent weeks, residents with houses closely proximate to the construction have expressed discomfort, disruption of peaceful enjoyment of their property, and damage to their recently constructed properties. From all accounts, no consultation was held with members of the community by the EPA, in keeping with EPA's mandate set out in Section 4.1a and G of the Environmental Protection Act, Chapter 20. While we take this omission as an oversight and not intended for the avoidance of doubt, we are compelled to seek guidance on whether any form of consultation was conducted with the residents of the community regarding the construction of the said hospital. We shall also be grateful for your urgent clarification and information regarding whether a feasibility study was conducted to determine the possibility of any adverse effects of the construction of your hospital as defined by the Act. That is, impairment of the quality of the natural environment or any use that can be made of it, injury or damage to property or to plant or animal life, harm or material discomfort to any persons, an adverse effect on the health of any person, impairment of the safety of any persons, rendering any property or plant or animal life unfit for use by human or unfit for its role in its ecosystem, loss of enjoyment of normal use of property. If indeed a feasibility study was conducted by your agency, what were those findings? As noted above, residents of our community in close proximity to the construction have reported property damage since the commencement of the construction. Please find attached photographs submitted by residents showing the damage reported to have been caused by the construction. This is of grave concern not only to residents who have already reported damage, but all the residents in our community who are likely to be impacted by this construction. We look forward to an urgent response and would welcome an opportunity for our representative committee members to meet with officials of EPA at the soonest date possible to discuss these matters. We look forward to hearing from you. Kind regards, Kioma D. Griffith. Now, this is a resident, a representative of Providence Gardens community, writing to the EPA and raising these matters. Now, if a hospital is going to be constructed in a residential area, which we have established the Providence Gardens to be, a residential area, then I think it follows that an environmental impact assessment must be done. Why? Take, for example, a hospital is going to generate what we call them bio waste, right? Bio waste, medical waste. How would the generation of those waste products affect the ecosystem of that living area? That hospital may be required to operate an incinerator to process its waste, needles, etc. How does the operation of that incinerator affect the quality of air, for example, in that neighborhood? Those are just some of my initial thoughts on this matter. But instead of conducting the environmental impact assessment, what did the EPA do? They say there is no need for such an assessment. In which other country, folks, a medical facility is going to be constructed in a residential area? But
so this is me again.
there will be no environmental impact assessment. None. Y'all talk to me, I want to know. Right? I would like to know. But guess what? I am just Kidaki Amsterdam from Cams TV. I just like to be bitter. I hate this government. They can't do anything right for me. And so when I talk, it comes from a place of bitterness. But the evidence is out there that citizens are suffering because of poor governance, of governmental and other connections and corruptions, of the Nova rich believing and acting as though money answereth all things, and the poor man ain't got no say. Right? I have a ton of videos and photographs here from these people who are complaining about what's happening in Providence. But guess what? I ain't gonna fill up my hard drive with them. I leave it to your imagination. Good. Do you know that the local government bylaws stipulate the height at which your fence is supposed to be? Your fence is not supposed to be. As a matter of fact, your fence is supposed to be constructed in such a way that it allows people to see into your yard. Right? Your fence is supposed to allow visibility in and out of your yard. But look around you and you will see what money can do. Some people fence their hide in the neighbor's house. Right? Some people's roof, they throw off their roof, throws water directly into their neighbor's yard. But don't go complain, because the public health inspectors are either toothless or fearful. They will do nothing. And the rest goes on. We spoke about what is happening on Buxton Public Road there the other day with the construction of the Chinese supermarket. Go check for yourself. Go check for yourself. And tell us if there's been any compliance there. I'm going to show you all something else. And then I'll open up the lines. All of these road contracts that the government is giving out, part of the requirement of the construction of concrete roads should be all roads, but I'm sure about the concrete roads, is when they are finished building the concrete roads, they're supposed to build up the parapets, or as we say, the road shoulders. Now I can talk for Buxton. This is where I traverse often, and I'm being specific to Sideline Dam right now. The road that took forever to be built has been completed to some extent, but the parapet has not been built up. Here how this contractor is building up the parapet, from my observation. Last month, I recognized machinery in the area, and they were digging a drain between Annandale and Buxton. And the mud that came out of that drain obviously was thrown alongside the concrete road to build up the parapet. And that earth settled there, and it was leveled nicely and so on from the digging. It did not get to the height of the road, and so the parapet was not fully built up on the western side. The western side is the Annandale side. But the eastern side, nothing was done. 2 days ago, I saw machinery. What did they do? They dug up the western side again, brought it closer to the road to get to the height, and they left it there. On the eastern side, you're seeing one photograph there right now. There's several photographs I want to show you. On the eastern side is what we say is a sideline trench. Right? And so you know the trench has a bank, just like the river has a bank. Instead of carting in earth or suitable materials to build up the parapet, the machinery went about digging up the bank, the trench bank. I think they got another word we just call it. I can't remember right now. Right? But they're digging it up to pull the earth closer to the concrete road. You see all the grass you see in this trench, you know, don't surprise. This trench. Right? So they're digging up the trench corner. This is what we just call the trench corner. Let me stick with that. They're digging up the trench corner to build up the parapet of the road. Now, I'm not a rocket scientist, and I don't expect you to be a rocket scientist, but I will tell you what will happen. And who can't see and feel, or who can't hear and feel, you know what happened? They are weakening the trench bank. They are lowering the trench bank. And so when you get a good shower of rain, the water will rise above the trench bank. It will weaken the earth and quite possibly either wash away the road, wash away the parapet, or definitely it is going to create chaos. Because the water which should have been kept in the trench, restricted by the bank of the trench can, as we say, is going to be able to come further inland, closer to the road. And so the $100 billion road that they built there, I'm exaggerating now, is likely to be undermined. But somebody can tell me it's nature. And I'm going to tell you again, it's rich people problem. Is greed. Is greed. Is greed. I am positive that the contract would have and must have, should have catered for them building up the parapet to the road. But maybe, just maybe, the contractor believes it is too much money to spend to bring loam or earth or other suitable material from wherever it is available to fix the road edge, to fix the parapet of Sideline Dam. And that is happening across this country. It's rich people problem. It eventually affects poor people, but it's rich people problem. The lines are open. 6225933 is the number to call. You're tuned to the Guyanese Morning Time. Permanent, sour grapes in the house. But guess what? The fruit came from the vine. And if you got a government that is souring the vine, then you're going to get sour grapes. The lines are opened. Oh, for those of you who are who would like to hear about Aubrey Norton and so on, I saw Aubrey Norton on Norman Brown's program yesterday. Disclaimer, I didn't listen to much of it. But from the comments, it seems as though Aubrey handled herself well. And Norman Brown came across as the aggressor. The angry man. The one thing I was taught and I'm aware of is your program, you're the interviewer. You got to be civil to your host. Call your life. To your invitee, to your guests. Y'all have Norman to understand that. Right? And I don't understand, again from the comments, I don't think he has destroyed Aubrey the way he really intended to destroy Aubrey, because Aubrey was able to answer and counter according to the comments of his issues. Call your life.
Good morning, Kadaki. Kadaki, that paper you was reading from is they doing the hospital or someone come from outside? Because I moved away from the phone.
I can't tell you who's doing the hospital. I can tell you what I was reading as a letter of complaint.
Okay. But I can understand that, Kadaki. Kadaki, as you said, you don't need rocket science to listen and know of certain things. I don't understand this at all, because hospitals have so much waste and all oxygen, and people are allergic to a lot of stuff. That why are you going to put a hospital or encourage someone to come from a foreign country to build a hospital around people where these are people who were born in this country? You know some of these people. Come on. How can you do that? I guess people does not care about humanity. Come on, you have to. How could you feel to know that you're coming to tell me something and you coming to my country? Where these people expect to go after they finish and out of office? Where are they going to go? Foreign country and live? Do you think people are going to look at them and screw up their noses and look at them how they destroy their own country? Building hospitals, doing this, doing that. Come on, you don't want that. When people watch you you. I'm not saying you're gonna forget about your country, but you will always, always miss your country. I know I have some people that is in the military and the way how they would stand up and when we collaborate with things. Oh my goodness. You gotta stand up for your country. You can't give your country up like that. Come on. Oh my God. It's just horrifying. And so much people like to come home and try and their utmost best. Give people a chance, let them come home. Some people want to retire and come back home. Give people a chance to come home and be able to live a healthy life. When you contaminate our country like this, and even before these things, because a lot of times we do not even know. You see them saying fouls will be minding the yard, them saying dog, them saying and all that kind of thing. We don't get shot for these things. So a lot of us got sick, and I know for me, when I came to this country, my mother had to go through hell. The amount of money my mother had to pay chemicals, this doctor to the next doctor to the next doctor to the next doctor. Finally, when I find out there's allergies right here, because of the pig, because of the sheep, because of the cat, because of the dog, because of the what else we had? Cow and all these kind of things, animals, things were allergic to. And a lot of these things are give tribute to people can't have their children because we did not know and we did not investigate. So a lot of times, you just cost people their life. Animals need to go at a special place. If people laugh, let them go and fill at those places and stop doing all this type of thing because a lot of us have serious allergies and serious problems with some of us can't even breathe. If you think, come and go to King's County and you're going to find out. I saw a top specialist in this country, the renowned top 2 specialists I had to come in. Someone saw me, and after they saw me on the street, and when they saw me, they said, look, take this home to your parents and let them call his doctor on. When you get to find out, doctor was expensive, but I had to find the money to take me, or else I'm going to be dead. All the kind of allergies that I get exposed to when I was young and growing up. Who to know that? Okay, you guys have a blessed day and take care.
Thank you for your call. You see, I try to avoid this to unfold with the dull and the ignorant, like Parman and Shivnath. Because they are so blinded by ethnic loyalty, or if is ethnic loyalty, that they can't even follow a simple conversation and reason. I explain all that I explain, and this idiot telling me, is the PNC people in control of City Hall? Is PPP broke it up? Is PPP being withholding the resources all the time that would have made it possible to maintain it? The PPP has been in government for 23 plus years before replaced by the coalition. When the coalition got into office and before the coalition was forced out of office, City Council was given large sums of money to start to address the eyesore that is City Hall that was falling apart. Because maybe, just maybe, the people in the coalition understood the value of that historical building and the importance of fixing it up. Go check your records. Since the PPP came to office, it's fight down at City Hall again for the project funding. Go check your records. I don't know. Some of y'all ain't got no nationalism. Y'all ain't got no loyalty to this country. One man, because I got a black face, I can't talk the truth against the PPP. Call it live.
Yes, good morning. Good morning to you and all my black brothers and sisters.
Flash Gordon, good morning. Stick a pin. Let caution you. I was told to ask you, please stop address people as them Kuli people. Continue.
When I Google the word Kuli, what it means, it tells me exactly what it means. Why they did not call you and tell you that, or talk it, that Kuli people must start addressing Kuli people, black man as black man. I know this day are coming. Why we love to respect Kuli people. What Kuli people don't respect black people. What good for the goose is good for the gander. Why it must be a problem for Flash Gardens and Kuli people?
Flash, move on.
Flash Garden.
Flash Garden, move on. Move on.
Yes. Flash Garden did not damage a black woman house, break down the house. This is our biggest problem in Guyana. We love East Kenyan people. We must approach them as East Kenyan brothers and sisters. Whatever East Kenyan people do to us, we must accept it and still recognize them as East Kenyan people. It is good for East Kenyan people come on national TV and program and disrespect Mr. Abinadu. It is all right. My God, my God. Why I cannot use that word, Kuli? But anyway, you have a wonderful day.
You mean for tell me the only thing flashcards talk about this morning is Kuli? And so because he was told not to talk about Kuli, he changed, he has nothing else to say. I can't believe it. Miranda Brown asked the question, how is the waste from the Georgetown Hospital being treated with in a residential community? Miranda Brown, I must be one of the biggest dunces in this country. That's assuming you ain't dunce more than me. Which residential community is the Georgetown Hospital situated in? Which residential community is the Georgetown Hospital situated in? The Georgetown Hospital occupies a block, as far as I know, between Lamar Street and New Market Street, East Street, and what's the other one? I can't, what's the name of the street? Anyhow, right? But check it out. In fact, it's a longer block. It's from Lamar Street all the way to Middle Street. That's the Georgetown Hospital complex there. What is the house closest to the Georgetown Hospital? Miranda Brown. How many houses you have in that locality with the Georgetown Hospital? Miranda Brown. This is a medical facility you're going to put smack dab in the middle of people who build their houses already. Call your life.
Yeah, good morning, Kadaki. With the blockage you are talking about, blockages. Now in this country, we are on the mud flats. There's a lot of high-rise buildings going up. And the people don't understand that when you disturb the land, as you rightly say, by driving piles, what happened? We got a church in the community, and because of the same thing was going on, and people don't really understand. You see, all that is being taken out of the ocean there, it is disturbing the natural foundation of the earth. And we have started to experience problems with concrete buildings. There's a church in the area, they had to stop using the area, the bell, free to ring the bell, because the whole place crack up. And then added to that, those big 40-ton trucks that rolling on the roads. Coming back to that, hospitals, if you look at hospitals, Georgetown Hospital was being built in an area where people weren't living. God, that is how the white people constructed the place. They thought about health. And all the hospitals that were being built before we came and we met them, New Amsterdam, they had a few cottages. Best was close to the ocean. Lenora, got this place. So I worked at Bartek Hospital. You saw where Linden Hospital is being located. All those things were done in the days of the white people, and they built hospitals. But now I notice in Freedom New Road, there are two big buildings that are being constructed. The thing constructed 10 house lots away from one another. Those are hospitals. And as you rightly say, where will they be discarding the hazardous waste that comes from a hospital? Everything when you take off from a person, that it is problematic for the community. So I don't know where's the latest goings on with this thing. Now the building of schools in the area. They built schools. I was at the place for a funeral yesterday in Philadelphia, Fort Newton. And they built the school. They put windows on the southern side of the school. The eastern side of the school, there is no windows. I think this northern side got a few square blocks, and the children complain of intense heat in these concrete buildings. Now they claim they have engineers, and I believe that engineers should check out buildings. And if you look at buildings that are being built in the outer world, they have certain building codes that the people must adhere to. Guyana claim that they have engineers. If Guyana had proper engineers, certain buildings that are going up in Guyana, if those engineers knew what engineering was, would have put an X and would not have allowed certain buildings to be built in Guyana, because Guyana does not have that soil formation to take the structure, those big structures all around the place. Now, when you put these things up, it causing problems. About the blockage, I could talk about that. Right now, I have somebody in my neighborhood that have gotten a big pipe, and they went, I don't know where the security loan from, and they are covering over the whole bridge with things. They got other people who have built across the entire width of the land concrete structures because they want to park, they got this and they got that. Put up a disco within the area. Now, these are points where the local government and the government on the whole should put a damper on, because when you put up these things across the trenches, you cannot, you won't be able to clean like about 50 feet of the trench. And when the 50 feet block up, they're going to block up the whole area, and you got problems. You talk about the trenches. Nowadays, what happened? They dig the trenches and they put the mud on the embankment. And when the mud blow up, they take it and they sell these mud for lots and lots of money. I don't know who really the money is going into, whose pocket the money is going into. Yesterday, they had the collapsing of that eyesore by the back of the market. You hear people say people used to live there, people used to sell there, but I don't know if people used to say, because on my daily trips to town every week to go and protest, I don't see that that place could have accommodate sellers. We have to remember for 23 years when the PPP was in, and now this added 4 years, they decided to destroy the city of Georgetown because they realized that there in Georgetown lies the bunch of APNOR PNC voters, and in order to destroy them, they look to don't spend money in the city. Now, as we notice, a lot of cases are going to court, and all these major business holders are winning these matters in court. The install regime, as the APNO people did not vote them in 2023, they cannot give a verdict on that election up to now. The chairman, nobody. They decide to come at our African brothers and sisters in a different way to remove them off the pavement. So they are going to the courts where they have complete control of the judicial system. And what is happening? Court cases are now going to court, and they are removing all the African people off the pavement from selling. That is a plan that is coming directly from the installed regime. Lastly, you spoke about the flooding of Dubai. Well, as they're now trying to find out the formation of Dubai, you cannot build land in a water place, because when you put down, it's going to look strong. And eventually the formation of land starts from a rock, then it goes to a sandbank, and it keeps building. That is nature. You can't destroy it. If you travel in the Essequibo River, they grade, and then eventually they put by, because they just can't remove them sandbank, and that does be a starting of island. So if Dubai do that, well, but remember the Bible story when Jonah was being sent to Nineveh, and he jumped aboard a boat going to another place. And what God do? God sent a storm. And when the day God hung at me to say, you that's it for me before you help me, and he realized he was the fault. You know what? Jonah tell them, throw them out in the whale. Now the tears of Guyanese, African Guyanese, and then low down Indian and Kuli people money. We ain't getting it, but the installed big wigs taking all the money from the oil rig and carrying it to Dubai. So what God doing as an answer to the people, let Dubai think, and I pray that the part that flood out must be where the money there. And even if the money from Guyana in flood out, Dubai is going to tell them, who could tell if it's an orchestrated plan, to tell them, you know what, we had the money in the vault and it flood out, and y'all lose your money. Watch and see how many of them going to start running to Dubai to see if they could scramble the money out. Good. Dubai flood, let the money go away. We, the poor people, we who supposed to get it, can't get it. And if we can't get it, let them that don't get it too. Bye-bye.
Thank you for your call. It's not that I like to answer Miranda Brown, but Miranda Brown helps me to teach. You got a slow student in the class. No, don't let me say slow. You got a bold student in the class. When everybody else is afraid to ask a question because they think it's a stupid question, is that bold student who will ask the question and teacher will answer and everybody will benefit. That is why I like Miranda Brown. Miranda Brown said, Kidaki, you get the wrong concept. Dig in the trench, you're going to hold more water. Miranda Brown, come to the front of the class so you don't be distracted at the back. I didn't say they were digging the trench. Not on the eastern side of the road. I said they're digging out the parapet or the trench bank. In other words, they were digging earth from close to the trench, making the bank or the trench canal lower than it is to pack that earth close to the road to build up the parapet. So if you have the trench canal low, when it rains and the water rises, what's gonna happen? I hope you understand that. It's not all the time I go to the Queen's English. Sometimes I gotta go down to Creole so you understand what I say. They will dig up a trench bottom, a trench canal for pack them next to the road. A trench canal get low. So when rain fall, the water go get high and you overflow a trench. You know the impact of that. Call it life.
Yeah, good morning, my brother. I wish you all the best of health and strength to stand up against these, as my brother Sherrod would say, trench crap, imbeciles and cricketers and what have you. This morning I choose to come on the program to hear my view. Because there is so much happening in our country. And I am hoping that conscious Guyanese, I use the word again, conscious Guyanese, are cognizant of the destruction that is taking place by these installed criminal political fellas. I want the Indian man to know, and some of the time I tend to use the word like me by your villager. But this morning, let me tone down a bit. I want the Indian and Amerindian brothers to understand that Guyana right now is like a ship having all the passengers on board. And I want them to understand, my mother used to teach us and say to us, the same stick that does lash black man does lash white one. Sister Daughter should be a living example for these fools who are continuing to support the BJP and the criminal elite. Because there comes a time when everybody will be affected. The economic sadness in this country is affecting each and every one. Why it is that my Indian brothers and sisters, especially the men, because I can tell you, the people who support this entire country, the women are loving people. But the men are so ossified, I cannot understand why the Indian men, they are so ossified to stand up against wrong and evil. And many of them are not benefiting anything particular. But the first thing they will tell you, I'm a Mati, what you going to do? It's a total racist ideology. Anyhow, so much for that. You're there?
Yes, I am.
Yes. Let me move on. This fella Norman, bro. You know,
Carter.
any sense?
Carter.
Yeah.
Don't give life to Norman. Move on.
All right. I was looking at the interview, the press conference, and I am saying the moderator. Let me throw down a card to you. Yeah, I am saying the moderator. In moderator.
Carter, what's wrong? You there? You call it last signal. It's not my doing. I don't think it's me. I didn't do anything.
But I'm right here. Are
Good.
you there?
So go ahead. Yes, Carter.
Yes. I removed the names. But on that interview, as an ordinary layman, I could have seen the hostility of the moderator. And I, with my own honest, conscious mind, will give Mr. Norton at least 89% of being upright. He answered all the questions. He answered them forthright. He even went into his book and threw a few lines here and there outside, you know. And I think everybody who supports PNC APNO should become conscious of what is going on. It's not about the present leader. It's about those who have their egoistic mentality And all of them are of elite. And they will do no good for Guyana. The man has have already said it publicly. The moderator forced him to say, because I have never heard him say it before, that the ones who are trying to condemn him have a bundle of skeletons in the closets. And they cannot find any skeleton in his closet, but they're coming up with similar something. The moderator even played a recording, and you see clearly this woman talking a bundle of crap, which is lies. One of the things that I'm totally against, and she's so foolish that she cannot understand. If you're going to praise a man for being a constructive businessman, technically that is what she did, because she said the man, he think this is a pig farm or a cake shop. That means that the man is good with managing. And that is how idiotic these devils are. He is good with managing, or else he would have failed. He would not have been having a continuous productive investment. Anyhow, we have to look at Guyana seriously and ask ourselves if we are happy with what is happening, which will continue to get worse, It wouldn't get better. If we are happy with it, and not only for ourselves, but for our children, grandchildren, and those who are to come. If we are not happy, we have no other choice when the right time presents itself to go on the other side of our support. Because it's one or two parties. It is only two viable political parties in this country. And for me, any individual who is going to say, none of the two of them is non-productive, and I don't want to use the right word, but it's very silly because you only have two parties. If it's not PPP, it's PNC APNO. And if you know that what is happening presently is not within the best interest of the nation, you need to go and vote on the other side. That's only my suggestion to those who are fickle-minded. When you come to the protest and all of that, the leader also spoke on behalf of that and his reasons and what have you. And then even within his camp, those who are promoting it. I have been viewing so many protests. I have been actually involved in some of them. And those people who are propagating protests, I have never seen them out there. So what are they talking about? Anyhow,
Thank you, caller.
there is so much we can talk, but other people have to talk. Have a blessed day. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for your call. Two quick comments I want to make. First one is from this scholar, we think is a pig farm or cake shop. One of the problems I have with political leadership and party leadership is that in most cases they don't see the thing as a business. PPP got a business on the Freedom House. It's called something Michael Ford Bookshop. I don't know if it still operates as a business, but I remember as a youngster they used to offer photocopying and so on and so forth here. And I'm sure the PPP got a lot of other businesses around this country and people's names and so on. Call or mute your microphone or I'll disconnect you. I don't know. I can't speak for the PNC because I don't. I know they used to have the WRSM. I don't know what business. Maybe if any of you are on the program, you can tell us what business the PNC is involved in. But I always say this, in my mind, a political party should be able to establish some commercial enterprise that is viable, that it will be able to be self-sufficient in terms of funding, and therefore doesn't have to depend on the input of businessmen when it comes to campaigns, for elections, etc. Why? Who pays the piper calls the tune? There's an argument right now about $100 million donated to the PNC or the coalition by some I'd say wily businessman, and it's unaccounted for, or it has gone into the wrong hands, and so on and so forth. If that businessman invested $100 million, note I said invested. It wasn't a gift. It might appear as a gift, but it's an investment. Because once a party that he gives that $100 million to finds itself in power, then they will be indebted to him. And they will be expected, like the PNC, like the PPP, to provide some reliefs to that businessman. A lot of people would say that the coalition is now out of power, and so that $100 million is lost to the businessman. Let me say to you, it's not lost, it's future investment. Because that businessman expects that at some point in time, the coalition or operatives of the coalition, especially whose name checks were written to, will find themselves back in power. And that will be the time to collect. Right? So don't run from that fact. And governments cannot be as fair and as open and as transparent and as good as they are expected to be, so long as political parties are dependent on businesses to start with, to finance them, to finance their entry into government. They will always be indebted to them. And so I will always argue that political parties must have an economic arm to fund them. In Ghana, we see quite the opposite of that. At least from where I stand, it doesn't seem as though political parties engage in economics in terms of owning businesses to fund themselves, right? So if that is what AMNA sees as an indictment against Aubrey Norton, that is part of our problem in this society. Every organization should be operated in a business-like manner, even if it is not for profit. Right? I want to make that clear. The other thing is, and it's not the first time I'm mentioning it, but Rhonda was saying if there were good engineers or real engineers in this country, a lot of the infrastructural problems would have been avoided. I disagree with you, Rhonda, and I disagree with anybody who takes that position. My argument is if agencies are allowed to function, oversight agencies are allowed to function, we will not have these issues. Engineers know what they have to do. Engineers give the right recommendations to government ministers and so on. But since government ministers are gods, they can tell the engineers, well, I don't want it, so you do it, sir. And if you don't do it, sir, you're going to go and look for a job somewhere else. We know jobs are difficult to find in this country. A lot of people bow over and they listen to the government ministers who think they are gods. And so when the projects fail, they sit back and they say, I told them it couldn't work like that. But none of them will come out publicly and say, I told the minister that was going to fail, and the minister told me to do it like that, because again, they're going to be looking for a job. If we want to fix these problems, we have to support our engineers, we have to support the systems that are put in place to work and demand that they work. Right? In any other country, the EPA saying we don't need to do an EIA for this, and certain problems become known after, the head of the EPA and lots of other operatives at the EPA were going to be looking for jobs. In many instances, they would have been jailed. But not in this banana republic. Call it live. Thank you for holding.
Good morning, Kadaki. Three things to run up. I live on reclaimed land, right? And where I live is just a mile away from the Everglades. Not only we have plenty people. The Everglades will be, a lot of the Everglades will be reclaimed and communities is being built. But what? They make sure that they build it to certain specifications. Every time you build a road here or putting up a housing, you always have to take irrigation into consideration. Check, and you could see Kadaki, especially if you come to Florida, because Florida is below sea level. And every time you build a highway, there's always reservoirs. You might think it's beautiful lakes, but those lakes are reservoirs to take off water for when it rains, hurricane, etc., etc. Yes, we do get flooding if it's high, if it's flash tide, blah blah blah, but that goes away. That will go away quickly. You touch on businessmen donating to parties. And there's a set of party people that I know always telling me, oh, we will never get Indian businessmen against to support him. And I said, yes. We don't need Indian businessmen. There are no businessmen to support him. No party need a businessman to support them. Because what you call that is political entrepreneur. Because when you get in, you owe them, as you said, right? And these people got the ability to make you make policies that is going to suit them. Because they donate a set of money to you. Just remember that. Number 3, with that mudslinging, this mudslinging that is going on in this party today, PNC party, they are just doing the job for Jack Dio. Now, Jack Dio has no reason to continue to call them out, disparage them, or throw them down. Let them continue with the mudslinging. Let them continue with that. And they're going to see where it's going to put them. They will see where it's going to put them. A lot of them are saying, the leader this and the leader that. Even onto the money thing that we talk about just now, I suggested to more than one of them, look, you could get donations from us out here. 1,000 people at $20. I was talking 2 years ago. We'll give you just a conservative number, 1,000 people at $20 to give you within a space of 2 years. Could have given them, right, at least $2 million to the man, right? And if you show that every week or every month we increase, just being conservative. But you know what? The leader this and the leader that and the leader that. I say I care less about the leader. I said it on this program before. I care less about the leader. What I know is static is elections is going to come and money is needed for elections. Money is needed for the elections. So they can continue leader this and leader that. You're getting blackout, you're getting water shedding, you're getting bad water quality, but you're waiting on the leader to come out and protest, to start a protest. Everyone should be a leader in this society. Every one of us should be a leader. But you know what? Everyone is going to end up at Border Boy just so when they come. You will see them there at Border Boy. But it's still going home to blockouts and the brown water that's coming through the pipe or sometimes no water. So let them continue and wait on leader this and leader that when we have all the parliamentarians doing absolutely nothing, just sitting down there and drawing their money, doing absolutely nothing. So wish them luck. I'm about to plug out from them. And you know, I'm about to plug out and say it is what it is. WPA, sit back and wait for your turn coming, and you will do what you gotta do. Because I know that is coming. These jokers have nothing planned. They don't know what's going on. So they can continue singing them or fighting. Let them stay there. I'm out.
Thank you, caller. The time is now 70 minutes past the 9 o'clock hour. It's time for me to go. I one voice note, and so I will play that voice note. And that will be a wrap. Let me hear what the voice note says. Let's play it. Where is it? It's a long one, it seems.
Because this morning, you addressed most of the things that I would have said pertaining to the market issue, right? Forgive me if I'm incorrect, but so far I have not seen a response from the sitting government as to what are their intentions toward, 1, restoration of that area, 2, the vendors that were injured. I haven't heard anything coming from the government as to what they will do about that. Obviously, those vendors have encountered loss. What's the plan for that as it relates to the vendors that were tending their wares at that time in question? I remember that during the coalition period, I saw something from MP Patterson about what was the intention for that area. Of course, as is the modus operandi of the sitting government, they ignore everything that was put in place by the opposition's government, and so now we are left in amazement and with some concern as to what will be the government's reaction toward that incident yesterday. As I said, I haven't heard anything from the sitting government pertaining to that. In terms of structures and layers of governance, it is a known fact that central government have sought to take over everything. So, if not government itself, perhaps the local government or the central government should be able to tell us, the citizens of Guyana, what is their intention. And that's all I'm going to say on that, because like I said originally, you took most of the points that I was going to make on that incident yesterday. Now, at the end of your commentary, you mentioned about the interview yesterday with Mr. Norton and Norman Brown. Let me tell you something. First of all, Norman went into that interview with preconceived notions. His arrogance, for me, was disgraceful, right? It was repulsive. He did some subtle things to disrespect the leader of the opposition. You spoke about one just now, talking about his program and all that nonsense. Then, and this is the one that got me really angry. You could have a drink or have some water. You're allowed to that. That feeds to the narrative that Aubrey has alcoholic problems. Perhaps Mr. Brown can check on one, I'm not going to put myself forward in it, but one of those secretaries that he was harping about yesterday when it comes to alcoholic issues. Perhaps he can do that. Yesterday, somebody said, because I was reading the comments on Facebook, and somebody said that Norman Brown made Mr. Norton smile. Well, given the state of what's happening in Guyana, there isn't a lot to smile about. But let me tell you something. Aubrey smiled because Mr. Brown was playing into his hands. He could see right through him, and that is why he was smiling. Anything or anybody who works with Mr. Norton will know that that smile was a smile of cunning, because he knew that Mr. Brown was playing right into his hands. Right? What is sad about all of this is that I've looked on for the past week or two, and it seems to me that some of the persons contributing to what is happening on Facebook at the moment have lost sight of what is important. They have taken their eyes off of the ball, and it's more a personal thing now. Right? All of them seem to have forgotten that they were given a mandate by the people of Guyana to represent them. They seem to have forgotten that. And in the meantime, the sitting government is watching on, and they're gloating at the ignorance being displayed right now by members of parliament of the opposition side. One other thing I'd like to say, and I'm going to come off now because I think I talk enough. When Mr. Brown confronted Mr. Norton with that tape from Amna Ali, she seemed very disjointed. For me, if you're going to be making such statements, you were supposed to have aligned your points and not be all over the place. That in itself, for me, discredits what she has to say. Thank you.
Thank you for that voice note. It's now 24 minutes past the 9 o'clock hour. It's time for me to go. But in closing, let me say, water under the bridge. I guess Norton doesn't have to deal with another Brown, right? Brown had questions, they were answered. Move on to the next stop. But finally, in closing, I like to say the Christians say that which was meant for bad might have turned out good. Have a great day. Y'all goodbye. Tonight is karaoke and oldies at Club Twilight. Come down, you want to continue the gaff? Come, let's do it here over beers. Goodbye. Have a great day. Love you all. Much love. See you tomorrow. Stay good. And keep your eyes out on what this government is doing or not doing.